I collapsed in my chair and looked at my cell phone. It was a little after 9 in the evening and I was exhausted. The twins had already gone to bed. I picked up the 6-year-olds from school at 4 in the afternoon. That meant I had to leave work almost an hour and a half early. As soon as they were in the car, I would drive home, make something for dinner in a hurry, play for an hour, and then struggle for another hour to get them to bed. I was completely frustrated. I got up and struggled up to the bedroom, where I haphazardly threw off my clothes on my way to the bed. Laying down on the bedspread in just my boxer briefs, I fell asleep easily. When the alarm clock rang at 6 in the morning, I rolled over onto my back and groaned. A few minutes later, I was in the bathroom under a hot shower trying to recover. To save time, I shaved in the shower, got out, and quickly dressed for work. The next duty was to get the twins ready for school. Both are in first grade at the local elementary school. After handing them each a cherry pie and a juice packet, I tackled the breakfast issue. After making a cup of coffee using a Keurig coffee machine, I gave my body a little boost of caffeine. Luckily, our local school has a morning program for parents who have to be at work around the same time most kids get to school. I dropped the twins off, and one of the aides waved to me as she led them into the school for a second breakfast before they were sent off to their regular classroom. I didn't wait, intending to get to my office as early as possible to make up for the hour and a half I had to leave early. I'm a financial analyst, and a pretty good one, I must say. I make excellent money and provide well for my family. I thought I had a solid marriage and a loving wife. That all changed 4 days ago when my loving wife sat down next to me. I was sitting by the backyard pool drinking Yuengling beer. She took the seat closest to me, set down her white wine glass, and started talking. "Sweetie, we have such a wonderful life in marriage. I love you to my very core. I don't want anything to come between us. I hope you feel the same way." I make a living capturing nuanced information and drawing conclusions about the value and risks involved in deals that could involve millions of other people's money. I'm good at it. After 11 years with my wife, of which we were husband and wife for 7 years, red flags started popping up everywhere when I listened to her. "You have a great job and career. You make more money than we need to enjoy a great lifestyle." I risked adding a comment. "Babe, you have a great career too. You may not make as much as I do, but your job as a counselor at a battered women's shelter is probably more important than mine. Not only that, but you've touched more lives than I ever have." She blushed at my copious praise. Still, I'm missing something, and I want to find out why there's this void in my life. Ugh, oh. Now the red flags loomed as if a hurricane wind was blowing. I looked at her face and saw that she was eagerly waiting for an answer. There seemed to be no guile or guilt in her eyes. "So you want counseling? That shouldn't be a problem." No, let me explain. You know Tom and Ruth?" I nodded. Tom and Ruth lived 4 or 5 houses down from us. I didn't know them very well. I knew Tom was some kind of real estate developer, and Ruth owned a women's boutique. As far as I knew, they had no children. Tom and Ruth have a sailboat that they keep in the Virgin Islands. From the pictures I've seen, it's a very beautiful sailboat. They invited me to go to the islands for a week to sail in the Caribbean. I've never been on an adventure like this, and I think it's just what I need to figure out why I feel like I'm missing something in my life. I knocked over a bottle of Yuengling and drained it before tossing it into the garbage can next to my chair. "When is this supposed to happen?" "We leave on Sunday and get home late the following Sunday night." I can't take a week's vacation on such short notice. Besides, it would be nearly impossible to arrange for someone to watch the twins for a week in 2 days. She shook her head and then lowered her eyes, a sure sign that she knew what she was about to say would not be well received. "Ugh, you're not in the plans. You were supposed to be here to take care of the kids." I was shocked. I looked at her as if she had grown a third eye on her stalk. "Let me get this straight. You're going to leave for a week on a sailboat in the Caribbean with 2 almost complete strangers, leaving me here to look after the kids and work, all without talking to me first?" "I'm talking to you now. 2 days before you plan to leave. The thing is, it looks like you've already made a decision without any discussion. It's a unilateral decision. I looked her straight in the face and put my finger on the table to emphasize my words. No, I don't think it is. You just need to call Tom or Ruth and express your gratitude for the invitation and then decline it. She didn't flinch once. Her eyes hardened, and I saw a completely different expression. An almost grim determination appeared on her face. I'm sorry, but this is what I have to do for myself. I know it's going to be hard on you with the kids, but you're strong and adaptable. It's only a week. My irritation was growing by the second, and my emotional control was at an all-time high. Gritting my teeth, I tried to curb my frustration enough to respond without sounding like a Marine instructor in full uniform. Then the doorbell rang. My wife, without saying a word, jumped up and ran to open the door. I heard voices, and within seconds, to my surprise, she was back on the patio with Tom and Ruth. I stared at them with my mouth open. Ruth and Tom were grinning widely, and my wife was now looking at me with an almost conspiratorial look. My brain was on full blast, and my thoughts were flashing almost faster than I could process them. This was the ultimate setup. All the defenses and tools I used every day in situations where lives could be affected went into play. Tom paused, as if expecting me to step up. I looked up at him with a level expression. My poker face was at the ready, and the game was in full swing. A few awkward seconds passed before my wife began seating people in chairs. I found myself surrounded by Tom on my left and Ruth on my right, with my wife directly across from me. I didn't utter a word. I had long ago learned that the one who starts such negotiations is usually the one in the weaker position. In the end, it was Tom who broke the ice. We're so glad Shelley is coming to the Caribbean with us. I remained silent. I looked at my wife intently, as if expecting her to say something. She lowered her gaze. Ruth added, She's going to have a wonderful time. It's so peaceful on the boat. She'll come back as a new woman. I looked back at my wife, but she was still scrutinizing the patio tabletop. I don't need a new woman. I'm perfectly happy with the one I have. That caused a flash of uncertainty on all three faces. Apparently, my attitude and my comment didn't fit the scenario the trio was expecting. Tom stuttered a little when he finally found his voice. Ugh. Shelley let us know that you'd be all for her taking this little vacation. Shelley was wrong. I'm totally against her flying off to the Caribbean on short notice with people we barely know, leaving the kids and husband to fend for themselves. Tom glanced nervously at Ruth. Ruth picked up the conversation. We hardly know each other. Shelley and I have regular coffee mornings. I looked at Shelley. She was still staring at the stain on the countertop. I thought you worked at the shelter every day. Shelley's voice was quiet and soft. A few weeks ago, I decided to cut back on my hours. I work in the afternoons for 3 hours a day. Things were coming together more and more in my brain. Another unilateral decision I had no part in. Interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? She shook her head. Taking this as an attempt to steer the conversation away from her, Ruth continued in a perky and cocky manner. Shelley and I have become very close. We have a lot of the same interests. We're going to do a lot of sunbathing, swimming, and shopping in the islands. I looked at Tom. What are you going to do? The usual. Take care of the boat, make sure we get from here to there, and have fun and relax with the girls. I nodded. Sorry for the change of subject, Tom. But what do you do for a living? I'm an independent real estate developer. Do you work for a real estate company, bank, broker, or something? No, I'm independent. I make deals with landowners, financiers, and construction companies to get projects moving in the right direction. Then I help develop landlords for the properties and manage the assets once they're built. Do you have an office? I work from home. I nodded. Things were starting to come together. Let me summarize and you three tell me if I'm understanding the situation correctly. Bright smiles suddenly appeared on the faces of all three of us. Shelley, over the past 3 weeks, you've changed your work schedule to spend time with Ruth and Tom at their home. Or have you been to our house as well? The smiles faded quickly. I waited for Shelley to speak. I really didn't think you'd mind. My income doesn't mean much in the scheme of things. It's not about income. The point is that you made an important decision in our lives without letting me know. Anyway, let me continue. I looked at the three of them and saw looks of consternation and confusion. Obviously, things were not going as they had planned. In light of your newfound friendship with Tom and Ruth, you have been invited to go to the Caribbean for a week at their expense. Oh, I have to pay for my airfare. I left it at that without comment. And the three of you intend to spend the vacation swimming, sunbathing, shopping, and having fun. All three of us had our mouths open at the same time. Tom was the first to come to his senses and replied, Uh, no, nothing like that. No one mentioned sex. Specifically, no. But let me tell you what my spidey sense tells me. My wife has changed her work schedule. I have a suspicion it was changed to make it more convenient for her to spend time at your house. You work from home. That makes it a regular threesome. Over the past month, my wife has had a sudden change in our house habits. I have noticed that she dresses differently in the mornings, but now wonder about the reason. On an urgent note, she has informed me that she is going away for a week with people with whom we do not have a deep relationship. At least I don't. Do you understand why I'm a little suspicious that there's more going on here than what your bright, smiling faces lead me to believe? The glances between the three of them spoke volumes to me. I should try to draw them into a game of poker. I might be able to pull off a score. Tom tried to salvage their plan. Bill, you're completely out of line. There's nothing going on with any of us. Shelley told Ruth that she was feeling a little empty, like she was missing something in her life, and we thought a trip to the islands might help her get out of that state. Tom, you'll have to excuse me, but this all sounds like you're making plans to take Shelley to a place where you can help her deal with her affliction. I quickly switched to another topic. Shelley, I'm going to be blunt. You know that I am strongly opposed to you traveling with these people. Whether you go against my objections is your decision. Just be aware that every decision has consequences, and all too often it's impossible to predict what they will be. That's the risk you take and the challenge you face. I pushed back my chair and stood up. Since Shelley invited the two of you here without my involvement, I don't think I have a reason to stay longer. She can invite her friends to this house whenever she wants. I'm tired, and I'm going to bed. I left without saying good night or goodbye. Upstairs, I changed my clothes and turned off the light, then climbed into bed. I lay on my side with my back to Shelley's bed. I had no trouble falling asleep that night. I have no idea how long Tom and Ruth talked to Shelley. I didn't wake up when she came to bed. I usually fall asleep a little later on Saturdays. I got up and put on my work clothes and made coffee. I'm not much of a breakfast person, so I was soon sitting at the lawnmower cutting the grass on the front lawn. On Saturdays, I had time to get everything done around the house, and then, weather permitting, I spent the afternoon at the pool with the twins. I saw no reason to change that schedule. That day, Shelley didn't want to talk to me. She seemed to avoid me in the house. True, I did see her on the phone a few times, watching me through the patio doors. I assumed she was talking to Ruth or Tom. I paid no attention to it. Sunday mornings were usually quiet. The kids were busy with videos. I liked to spend quiet Sunday mornings on the pool deck with coffee and a tablet, watching the local and regional news. It wasn't uncommon for Shelley to join me. Today, however, was unusual. Shelley stayed upstairs all morning. I didn't pay much attention to this, not out of ignorance, but because I wanted to see how the situation would develop. Around 10 a.m., I went back into the kitchen for another cup of coffee and saw Shelley putting her backpack by the front door next to some other luggage. I finished making the coffee and went in to look at the suitcases. Shelley came downstairs dressed in capri pants and a sleeveless print shirt. I sipped my coffee. So you're really going on this cruise? Yes, just for a week. It'll be good for both of us. Shelley, the only thing it will bring is more grief and pain than you can imagine. She looked at me incredulously. What do you mean? How can it cause grief and pain? I'm not going to try to explain it to you. If you want to be stupid and ignore what you're doing, what it means, and what the consequences are, then it shows you really don't care. That's stupid. I'm doing this for us. I shook my head and went back to the pool deck. It wasn't long before I heard children wailing in the house. I quickly got up and walked into the house. The twins were standing at the door, crying loudly and desperately clinging to their mother's legs. Don't go, Mommy. We don't want you to leave. You have to stay here and take care of us. Who's going to drive us to school and make dinner? Shelley looked at me as if expecting me to say or do something. I sipped my coffee and let her deal with the situation she had created. She knelt down and started cooing to them. It's okay, little ones. Mommy just needs to be alone. Daddy will be here, and he will take good care of you. I'll be back in a few days, and I'll bring you some special surprises. She stood up, gathered her bags, and managed to get the two 6-year-olds off her feet. I saw Tom and Ruth in their BMW SUV waiting. Tom had the sunroof open, Ruth was smiling and waving. The twins were still crying for their mom when the BMW pulled away. I gathered the kids and promised them breakfast. I wasn't going to cook, but the chocolate pancakes at IHOP were always my favorite meal. After breakfast, we spent the morning at the park, where I met a few other moms sitting at a picnic table under a shady tree while their kids played. They were friendly, and soon I was part of the conversation. One of the women asked if I was a single dad, and I casually replied that I had been for a week. This prompted countless questions about the situation, but I did my best to brush them off, writing off my wife's absence as a family trip. Lunch was followed by a trip to Golden Arches, which was another gaming area. It wasn't the most nutritious diet, but it got me out of the kitchen, out of the house, and out of the company of adults. I found 3 other dads treating their kids to lunch and playtime. They were all single fathers who were ordered to have weekend visits with their children. My conscience prevented me from asking too many questions. After lunch and a long negotiation, which with 6-year-olds is an interesting endeavor, they negotiated like old pros, and I would swear they could communicate with each other without words. I found myself promising a trip to the mall and toy store. I got out without shopping and returned home in time to make dinner, have some quiet time, and put the twins to bed just after 9 p.m. Monday was almost a disaster. I overslept, so I had to hurriedly get the twins ready for school. The teacher met me at the door, asking if there was a problem. I told her that the children's mother was away, and I was handling them on my own. She shook her head and told me about the school lunch program at the school. I didn't have time to sign up as I was already late for work. I talked to my boss and explained the situation to him a little. He was a little annoyed, but allowed me to adjust my work schedule to accommodate the twins' needs for the week. I arranged to come in early to make up for the time I had to leave in the afternoon. It almost brought me back to that moment at the beginning of this story. As I lay in bed that night, exhausted, I was sure that nothing good was going to come of this unless I did something proactive to deal with the situation. As I lay there staring into the darkness, an unexpected thought occurred to me. I fought over this problem for several hours and finally came to a dramatic conclusion. Having made my decision, I quickly fell asleep. The next morning was a little easier. The kids were responsive and were able to dress themselves. They weren't the epitome of fashion, and I'm not sure their socks matched, but they were up and ready to go. Knowing they would have breakfast at school, I dropped them off, did a little paperwork with the school secretary, and then headed to my office. My first stop was my boss's office. He looked concerned when I walked in with a cup of coffee and a smile on his face. You either ate the canary or your wife came home. Which is it? Neither, but I have a request. Okay, I'm listening. I have almost 3 months of bank vacations and personal time. Yes? I want to take 10 days, starting tomorrow. What? That's short notice. I shrugged. I knew he couldn't refuse. He might not be happy, but I had free time, and I could use it as I saw fit. Good. I'll take care of the paperwork. Would it be too much to ask what you're going to do? Am I taking the kids on vacation? You'll be joining your wife. I'm not sure. That remains to be seen. By the time I left the office to pick up the kids from school, I had already made all the necessary preparations to put my plan into action. From school, the kids and I headed to Walmart to do a little shopping. When we drove out a few hours later, my wallet was much lighter and the back seat of the Suburban was packed. We stopped, bought a pizza to take home, and had a picnic in front of the TV, which seemed like an original idea to the kids. Their mom would have been horrified that her carpet and upholstery might be stained with pizza sauce. I had no such qualms. I had a conversation with the kids while we ate and watched Frozen on the Disney Channel. The gist of the conversation was that they wouldn't be going to school for at least the next 5 days, and probably more, which was the reason for the screaming and laughing. I then told them that tomorrow we are going on a trip. We will leave before lunch, fly an airplane over the ocean, and then check into a wonderful hotel right on the beach. Shouting and laughter again. When they finally relented and went to bed, I had to pack up and get us ready to leave. It was almost 1 a.m. All the luggage was at the door ready to go. I was sure I had thought of everything. And if I hadn't, there's probably a Walmart in the Virgin Islands. An Uber pulled up to our house at 9 a.m., and with the help of the baby, we loaded our suitcases into the minivan, got in, and drove to the airport. While the Uber driver was taking us to the terminal, I called the kids' school and let them know I was picking them up from school for at least 5 days. I knew that traveling on such short notice with kids could be challenging, but we were determined to go on an adventure. We boarded the plane with no problems and landed in the Virgin Islands 6 hours later. A shuttle met us at the airport and took us to the beach resort. There was nothing to do but drop our suitcases in our room, change into our swimsuits, and hit the beach. The kids were in paradise, and I was right there with them, holding a Mai Tai cocktail in one hand. We spent 2 days at the resort. We learned that there was not only a beach, but also a huge water park with a lazy river, slides, splash pads, and a wave pool. The bar was also staffed by young girls from the island who were more than happy to treat me to drinks of my choice. Life was definitely getting better. While the kids were sunbathing, I was on the phone. I wasn't going to spend all my time lying by the pool or on the beach. I finally found what I was looking for, and the second phase of the adventure was underway. In the evening, I explained to the kids that we were leaving the resort the next day. They had stretched out faces and disgruntled faces. I then told them that we would be getting on a boat and sailing around the islands. Early the next morning, we packed up and caught an Uber to the local marina. At the marina office, the kids were fascinated by the various boats moored in the slips. I found the man I was looking for. Jeff Turner could have been between 55 and 75 years old. He had long gray hair gathered in a ponytail, a gray beard, sparkling green eyes that seemed to always be smiling, and a small belly hanging over the waistband of his swim trunks. I was to learn that Jeff rarely wore anything but swim trunks and the most garish Hawaiian shirts imaginable. He mostly went barefoot, unless he had to navigate terribly hot asphalt. He was so tanned that he looked more like a local. "You must be Bill. I'm Captain Jeff. And who are these two little buddies?" I introduced the twins and they stood there, eyes wide and staring at Jeff. I don't think they knew what to make of him. "Let's go aboard and stow your gear. Then I'll go over some of the rules on my boat." He led us down one of the piers to a 65-foot sloop that looked like, sitting still, it was already running fast. He helped the twins climb aboard, and I handed him the bags. It took a few minutes to get us situated in our seats. Each of the twins had a small cabin with twin beds, a desk, and a porthole. I got a slightly larger cabin with a double bed and a bathtub. Captain Jeff made constant comments, mostly about how best to store our gear and what the daily routine would be on the boat. The kids listened intently, and I prayed for their attitude. When everything was ready, we went back to the cabin and found seating. "Here are my rules on my boat. No talking behind my back, no arguing. Everyone is working. If I tell any of you to do something, it must happen immediately. If you don't understand, ask. You are here to have fun, but you are also expected to learn." Dad, our normal day will consist of spending the morning doing deck chores. Once they are done, we can go snorkeling, swimming, fishing, or go ashore. If we like the place, we can stay overnight. Otherwise, as darkness falls, we raise anchor and head to our next destination. Sometimes we arrive at the spot before dawn. Sometimes it is later in the day. But I expect everyone to learn how to sail. Dad, you'll help me keep watch. You two will get an education in seamanship, and when you get home, you'll be junior captains. I already like this guy. Some of the other charter owners I'd talked to wouldn't even consider taking two 6-year-olds on their boat. Captain Jeff seemed to jump at the chance. Now let's get the boat out of this marina and into the ocean. Your father isn't paying me to sit on this dock. We're going sailing. Shouts in excitement. I watched Jeff skillfully maneuver the big boat out of the harbor. He only used the motor to get us out of the parking lot. As we entered the channel, he began giving orders. Bill, see the blue line at the bottom of the mast. Grab hold of it and unhook her from that jib. Then bring her to the windlass and make 3 clockwise turns around the windlass. When I tell you to, hold on to the tail of the fishing line and spin the winch like crazy. As I approached the mast and released the fishing line, I looked over and saw Jeff with Ethan in front of me, standing on the cooler and holding the rudder. Annabelle was watching mesmerized as Jeff helped Ethan steer the boat. I heard Jeff call out to me, "Raise the mainsail." As commanded, I grabbed the tail of the cable and pulled the winch. Looking ahead, I saw the mainsail coming out of the tiller and slowly climbing up the mast. I jumped, hearing a pop and a ripple as the wind filled the sail. The mass of white fabric unfurled into a huge cloud that stretched over the side of the boat. I felt the boat tear forward until the winch stopped. Untie that line and wind it carefully at the base of the mast. I complied with his orders and returned to the open cabin. Annabelle was standing on the refrigerator with her hands on the chrome and wooden wheel, eyes wide and mouth open. "Daddy, I'm driving the boat." We sailed for almost 3 hours. Jeff left me at the helm, which I thought was interesting because I had no idea where we were, what direction to sail in, or what our destination might be. His instructions were simple. Keep an eye on the boat. If anything changes, give me a holler. I later learned that the boat had a fully automatic control system that made it almost unnecessary to steer the boat under normal circumstances. He appeared from inside the boat with a large tray of cold snacks, cheeses, fruit, and bread. The kids were enthusiastic, and I found the treats refreshing. Finally, we approached a small island and anchored in a sheltered cove. The water was calm, and 50 yards ahead we could see a beautiful beach. Looking down, I thought I could touch the bottom, so clear was it. Heck, I could see a lobster crawling on the rocks. We'll spend the night here. Tomorrow we can swim, snorkel, and explore the island. That will give everyone a chance to get used to life aboard. I'm really surprised none of you got seasick. I shrugged. I'm not prone to it, and the kids are very hardy. Jeff nodded. There were some chores left to do, and then we could think about dinner. My menu and schedule lists spaghetti with meat sauce. Is that acceptable? The kids like spaghetti and I like it easy. If he doesn't eat me first, I can usually put it away. Jeff grinned. After a few basic chores, which included cleaning the bathrooms and putting the cabins in order, Captain Jeff engaged the twins in making spaghetti. I sat on the bench at the dining table and watched him. He seemed to be in his element. The kids were helping him with the spaghetti and meat sauce, making garlic bread, and pulling salad preparations out of the refrigerator. Ethan, who was known to dislike eating green vegetables, refused the salad. Jeff began to talk about Sailor Popeye and how he ate spinach to become strong and defeat bad guys like Bluto. He then promised Ethan that he would show Popeye cartoons before bedtime. The kids ate with gusto, and so did I. I watched Jeff. He was paying more attention to the kids than I was. Ethan, wrinkling his nose slightly, still ate about half of his salad. After we cleaned up the kitchen, I sent the kids to bed. They weren't thrilled, but they were tired too. It had been a long day. When I returned to the salon, Jeff was sitting in a chair at the navigation table. I sat at the table and watched. He was making entries in an antique flight log book. Closing the book, he looked at me over his glasses and smiled. Say, Bill, would you care for some adult beverage? What have you got? 3 or 4 beers, a pretty full bar, soft drinks, fruit juices, and a pretty good wine cellar. It's a pretty well-equipped yacht. It's a McGregor 65. She's designed to travel anywhere in the world. For years, she held the pennant for the fastest Atlantic crossing by a vessel of her class. I thought for a moment. I'd take a beer. Good choice. I thought so. He walked over to the refrigerator and handed me a cold Coors beer with a long neck. I uncorked the cap, and we touched bottlenecks. This beer tasted like the nectar of the gods. I'm sure it was all about the boat, the sea, and the company. Over the next 3 hours, Jeff and I got to know each other. I learned that he was a retired firefighter from Texas. Shortly before he was about to retire, his wife filed for divorce. She took half of everything he owned, including half of his pension. He looked at his options, quickly cashed in his pension, and headed for the islands. He never looked back. He worked at the marina for a few years, and then this boat was put up for sale. It sat unattended in the marina for a few years. The owners abandoned it, and the marina sold it to Jeff, returning the space fee. It took almost all that was left of his pension. Jeff repaired the boat himself. 8 years later, he owned 4 more small boats and a quarter interest in the marina. He did custom charters and kept the marina in good order. He listened to my story and sympathized with me. Are you going to get a divorce here when you get back? I'm not sure. You know how divorce laws work. I'm going to get raped. She'll get half of everything. The house until the kids are adults, alimony, child support, and I'll get to see the kids a few times a month and a couple times on holidays. To me, that's not an acceptable solution. Jeff nodded in understanding. I continued my questioning. How come you agreed to take the kids? I know most other charter captains wouldn't go for it. Jeff sighed and sipped his beer. My wife got custody of the kids. When I moved to the islands, she wouldn't let me bring them here even for vacations. I lost touch with my children, and now they have children, and I've never seen my grandchildren. Being able to see children like yours fills a void in my heart. I could see the pain and anguish on his face as he talked about his family. This was transmitted to me as I was deathly afraid that the same thing would happen to me. Then he surprised me with another unexpected question. Where is your wife on this vacation? Surprisingly, she is somewhere in the Virgin Islands. She left with her friends for a week, a few days before I decided to come here with the kids. She left without warning. 2 days before she got on the plane, she told me she was leaving. She didn't ask. She told me. Jeff just shook his head, and then I saw him press his lips together, looking up. Do you know the name of the boat? No. I don't know anything. She didn't tell me where they were going or anything. What's the name of the owner of the boat? Tom Downey. His wife's name is Ruth. Jeff got up, and when he came back, he had a clipboard. I knew my cell phone was getting no signal at all. Is there a signal here? He pointed to a small dome on top of the hut. Satellite, full internet everywhere we go. He tapped the screen for a few minutes. I saw his face spread into a wide grin. Tom and Ruth Downey, registered owners of a 46-foot Easy Play catamaran. Great boat. Has all the latest electronics, including a transponder. What? A tracking device. It's becoming more and more common. This boat has one. Allows you to track the boat via satellite. It's a great tool, especially for charter companies. You can go to a website and see the location of your boat. Helps the Coast Guard in case of an emergency as well. Right now, it tells me that Easy Play is about 100 miles south, anchored near a group of small islands. That's interesting, I suppose. Yes, interesting. I give up. So do I. It's been a long day. Next chapter. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the porthole above my bunk on the sailboat. Something wasn't right. When I went to bed, the boat had hardly moved at all. The only sound I heard was the light beating of the surf against the hull, and everything was practically flat. When I rolled over onto my back, I noticed that we were at a certain angle to the right, or starboard, side of the boat. I could hear water running through the hull, and the motion of the boat told me that we were moving, and at a good rate of speed. I pulled on shorts and a t-shirt and headed for the galley and the main salon. Jeff was there at the navigation station. He was engrossed in a tablet on his desk. As I rounded the corner, I smelled coffee. Jeff looked up and grinned. Coffee's on the stove. The mugs are just above, hanging on hooks. I quickly drank a mug of hot black coffee and walked over to the clipboard on the table. I realized it was some kind of weather map. Ursa, I thought we were going to spend the day exploring the island. I had a change of plans after you went to bed last night. I went back to check things out one last time before heading home and noticed that the easy game had already started. They are coming back to us. I had an inkling of where they were headed, so I decided we would change the plan and head to the same destination. What destination? Jeff touched the tablet, and the screen changed to look like a normal map. There were two trails on the screen, a blue one and a red one. I mistook the red trail for ours and the blue trail for easy play. If I extended the lines, they would intersect at another cluster of islands. These islands are owned by one of the cruise companies. They use them as one of the ports of call on some cruises. If you're not on a cruise, you can buy a day pass and get there by private charter or shuttle. Private charters can come into their marina, buy a day pass, and pay a mooring fee to enjoy everything the island has to offer. There are beaches, sailboats, paragliding, a water park and pool, bars, restaurants. It's a huge playground. One of the islands is an adults-only area. I think you can imagine the amenities offered there. I suspect your friends are headed there. So why are we going? Well, for a couple $100, you can buy a day pass for you and your family to the regular part of the island. You can do things I don't get the chance to do, like paragliding or scuba diving. Sounds like fun, and the kids would love it. I thought we'd get a chance to see easy play. I'm not sure I want to see them. Why would I? Jeff grinned, a sly gleam in his eyes. You spent a lot of money to make this trip happen at the last minute. You could have gotten a little benefit and personal satisfaction, if you know what I mean. I thought about it. It would be interesting to sail this catamaran, so everyone knows we're not sitting at home thinking about what they're doing. How do you think the kids would feel about seeing their mother like this? The family island has a babysitting area where you can check them in and they'll keep them busy the rest of the day with all sorts of fun activities. It's designed to give parents on one of the family cruises some adult alone time. I thought for a moment about slowly cruising alongside Easy Play, standing on the railing of the 65-foot vessel and waving goodbye to my cheating wife and her friends. A little revenge might have lifted my spirits. Jeff, you are a conniving and cunning character, and I like the way you think. How long until we arrive? A couple more hours. I think in a little while we'll arrange a mooring by radio, anchor, and secure. You can arrange a couple days pass for you and your kids. I'll do the detective work. Maybe I can find Easy Play without too much trouble. From there, we'll proceed as planned. I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, my face broke into a wide grin. The kids probably won't be up for another hour or so. Tell me more about this boat and your business. It's intriguing. We sat for the next hour and a half, and Jeff told me about the McGregor 65, its history, the company that built it, and his own experience as a charter captain. I learned a lot of new things. He had sailed mostly in the Caribbean, but had crossed the Atlantic a couple times. One of his dreams was to sail around the world and visit all the exotic ports he had read about all his life. The main thing holding him back was the lack of a crew and a partner. He didn't want to set off alone. He asked me about my life, and I briefly told him about the stage I was at that day. He asked about what the future held for him. Jeff, I really don't know. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have told you I'd be working until the kids go to college. Then I'd retire, and Shelley and I would be doing a lot of the things most married couples dream of. Traveling and exploring. What about your kids? By the time my plan reaches retirement, they'll be in college and adults. We'd be an empty nester, with free time and financial resources to fulfill our dreams. Interesting. But what now in light of the current situation? I don't know. Divorce would ruin my financial plans and life goals. I'm not sure what I want to do. I was hoping this trip would help me figure it out. About that time, two grinning faces appeared in the cabin. The twins ran down the hallway, excited for what the day had in store for them. Ethan suddenly looked at them seriously. I'm hungry. You're always hungry. He grinned, but Jeff shifted the conversation. There will be breakfast, scrambled eggs, sausage, and toast. Who wants juice? Next chapter. We spent the morning sailing. I'm learning all sorts of nautical terms. I was afraid the kids would get bored, but I was wrong. Jeff kept them from getting bored by letting them steer the boat and string the sails. In fact, the automatic navigation system did most of that without drawing attention to itself. When the dolphins joined us for a ride on the bow wave, the kids were left to lie on the front deck and watch them. Shortly before noon, the islands appeared on the horizon. As we approached the harbor entrance, Jeff took control of the boat. He approached the docks at full throttle. He already knew which buoy we would dock at. I was on the bow of the boat with a mooring stick and a mooring line attached to it. It was a clever contraption that allowed me to reach the mooring ring on the buoy and hook the hook into the ring. Jeff confidently approached the buoy, and as the bow of the boat approached, I reached out with the stick and made an attempt to hook into the buoy ring. I missed. On the second cast, I hooked it and heard cheers behind me as Jeff led the twins in celebrating my first catch. I tidied up the front deck, coiled up the excess mooring line, and put the stick back in the forward sail locker. Jeff's insistence on cleanliness and order on the boat was passed on to me. As I walked back down to the deck, I noticed Jeff lowering the inflatable dinghy at the stern of the boat. The twins were watching this. As I approached, Jeff grinned. I usually just swim to shore, but with kids, it's probably best to take the centerboard. I need to stop by the harbor master's office and get everything set up. You need to visit the office on the island and get your passes processed. While I'm ashore, I'll ask around about easy play. I nodded, waiting for Jeff to climb into the inflatable boat. I helped each of the kids down and then climbed in myself. The motor came to life, and we raced toward the pier. Jeff headed for the marina office, and I headed for the island office just a few yards away. The kids were excited. They played volleyball on the beach, and while we were walking around, a boat towing two people suspended from a parasail sailed by. It took me about 45 minutes to make all the arrangements. I had to show our passports, but Jeff had warned me about that, so I put them in a waterproof pouch on my belt. The main time spent checking in was spent exploring all the options and activities. Some activities had additional costs, such as parasailing and snorkeling. I opted out of those for now, but signed the kids up for supervised daytime activities. This would free up my adult time. After getting our passes, we headed back to the marina. I saw Jeff sitting at a table with an umbrella. There was a drink on the table, a clipboard in front of him, and a pile of boxes and bags on the bench. As we approached, he looked up and grinned. All set? Yes. I signed the kids up for a supervised afternoon program tomorrow. They'll be busy and supervised from 9 to 5. I also found out that the same center is available for babysitting in the evening if I need it. Good. We'll moor for as long as we want. I've picked up some supplies from the ship's store and arranged for fresh water to be delivered to our tanks. I learned a long time ago that you should never miss a chance to fill your tanks with fuel or water. I nodded. I suggest you take the kids and go exploring. This whole island is nothing but a giant amusement park, and most of it is free for registered guests. Take your time. Enjoy yourself. I'll be on the ship as I need to take care of some maintenance, and then I'll do what I do best. Sitting on my keister and reading. When you're ready to go back to the boat, check in at the office at the marina, and a dinghy will take you out. I looked at the kids, who were already looking at me wide-eyed and full of anticipation. Then let's get this adventure started. Jeff, we'll see you tonight or tonight. Can we bring anything for you? No, I'm fine. Jeff picked up his gear, I took the kids' hands, and we all headed out to start the rest of our day. It was late evening when we finally arrived at the dinghy at the marina. Jeff was lying on the cushions in the cockpit, reading his clipboard, and stood up as we approached. Permission to come aboard, Captain? Of course. I had to lift the two sleeping kids up to Jeff. Ethan and Annabelle fell asleep as soon as they settled into the Ace. After hoisting them aboard, I tipped the boat over and climbed onto the deck of the larger vessel. Jeff was holding Annabelle in his arms, and Ethan was curled up on a cushion in the cockpit. Right. Do you mind carrying Annabelle to her cabin while I take Ethan? Not at all. I carried Ethan into the cabin and laid him on the bed and covered him with a blanket. He was covered in sand, but I decided to deal with it in the morning. Rounding the corner, I peeked into Annabelle's quarters. Jeff was standing there looking at her lying in bed. He did the same and put her to bed without changing her clothes. I watched him and saw his shoulders rise and fall several times. It looked like he was sobbing. I deliberately slammed Ethan's cabin door a little harder than necessary. When I turned around, Jeff was already coming out of Annabelle's cabin. Bill, you may not think so, but you're still the luckiest guy I know, even under the circumstances. He walked abruptly back into the parlor, leaving me a little stunned. By the time I had checked on Annabelle's condition, closed her cabin door, and made my way into the salon, Jeff was already sitting at the table. On the table were two glasses filled with ice and an amber-colored liquid. Jeff pointed to the glasses. This is the best island rum you can buy. It's too good to pair with all that fruity stuff. I sat down, took the glass, sniffed, and took a sip. I'm not a rum drinker, but I had to admit that what I tasted was something unique and wonderful. I looked at him in surprise. It's fantastic. He nodded. I have other news. The yacht Easy Play has docked at the adult island and has a mooring for the next 3 days. I assume they will stay here until they need to leave to go back to the Virgin Islands to catch a plane home. I listened. I knew it was time to make a decision. What do you suggest? Jeff took a deep breath. It depends a lot on what you want to do next. And here it was. I was on a roll. I had to decide whether to fish or take the bait in this case. I think Jeff saw the indecision on my face. Listen, you still have a few days. Take the kids to supervised activities tomorrow. Then we'll have the whole day to poke around on the other island and see what's going on. I'm not sure I want to visit that island. Agreed, but we can go around the island and the docks in the motorboat, just to see what we can see. Okay. So that's what we did. The next morning, I took the kids ashore after they had showered and put on fresh clothes. Jeff got the boat ready, and when I returned, we immediately set sail. It was a 45-minute swim to the other island. We entered a small cove under sail and slowly made our way to our mooring spot. Easy Play was the only catamaran we could find. I don't know what I was expecting, but what I found was definitely not on my list. As we entered the harbor, I had high-powered binoculars. Finally, I focused on Easy Play. I guess I half expected the boat to be empty, while Tom, Ruth, and Shelley enjoyed the fun on shore. When I examined the boat, it was clear that all three were aboard. Tom was lounging on a trampoline stretched between the two hulls of the catamaran. Ruth and Shelley were lying on deck cushions in the large cockpit. Even more amazing was that Ruth and Shelley were hugging each other and kissing. Jeff crept between the moored boats, slowly approaching Easy Play. None of the three on the other boat seemed to pay any attention to us as we approached. We were about one boat length away when Tom looked back to watch our boat as it approached. He didn't show much interest until I took the binoculars away from my face and stared directly at him. It took a second, but I saw recognition flash across his face. Sound travels well over water, and I clearly heard him exclaim, "Son of a bitch," I heard one of the women say. What? I scooted closer to the rail of our boat as Jeff steered the long, sleek craft just a few feet from the catamaran. I watched as Ruth and Shelley disengaged and turned to look at us as we sailed silently by. Then I heard a sigh in Shelley's voice. What the hell? I raised my hand in a semblance of haphazard military salute, lowered my hand, and turned to Jeff. Captain, I think we've done what we need to do. Let's clear the way and clear this harbor. See, I'm getting all nautical. Jeff didn't utter a word. He turned the boat around, and as we slid to the other side of the catamaran, the rumble of the diesel engine increased and the boat picked up speed. I looked back at the three on the catamaran, and they were looking at us with their mouths open. On the way back, Jeff and I talked about almost nothing. We set the sails, and when I finished on the foredeck, he filled our glasses with ice and rum. We sat in silence in the cockpit as the boat headed back toward the main island. Finally, Jeff broke the silence. Well, what now, my friend? I shrugged. I really don't know. Can the old pirate offer some suggestions? I grinned. Of course. There's one big question you have to answer. Would you and the kids be better off with her in your life or out of it? That wasn't what I expected him to say. I had to ponder the question while sipping rum. When I analyze a stock, I usually do what most people call a SWOT assessment. I list everything I can know about the stock in 4 categories: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay, what are the strengths of staying married? It will be good for the kids. It means there won't be financial Armageddon. That's not good enough. No. What about the weaknesses? Existence in a loveless marriage. No trust, no real relationship. Being cuckolded and dealing with the consequences of that among our friends and my coworkers. The damage it can do to children in such a toxic atmosphere. Right. And the possibilities? That's a tricky one. I don't know if there are any. I think the possibility of reconciliation would be a possibility. But honestly, I don't think there's much chance of that right now. The family will remain intact, but at what cost? It would be a sham and a lack of love. I would have the opportunity to keep working and strengthen our financial situation. Threats? I grinned. The whole concept is a threat. It means an unhappy and unhealthy relationship. I can see this whole thing becoming so toxic that it will eventually corrode and destroy us all. I don't know if I can live with her constant cheating. Okay, did you have it analyzed, and what did it tell you? I knew it wasn't an in-depth analysis or even a very thoughtful use of my method. But what it showed me was that there was no way I could go back to living with Shelley. It would destroy me emotionally. I felt like it would end up damaging my children for life. Divorce would ruin both of us financially, and the possibility of a contentious, protracted fight would be hard on the children as well. I was at an impasse. That's what I told Jeff. He poured 2 more glasses of rum. Bill, you're smart and systematic, but in some circumstances, those qualities can become a handicap. There are times when you have to abandon linear and systematic thinking and get out of control. I looked at him a little confused. The rum had taken its toll on me, and my thought processes weren't as precise and quick as usual. Huh? He laughed. Back in the day, we called it out-of-the-box thinking. Some said it was the path not taken. You know, going where no man has ever set foot. The Chinese say that sometimes it's best to do what your enemy least expects. I listened to this. I was aware of my forehead furrowed and my eyes squinted. It was a far cry from my usual actions, but through the fog of rum and emotion, I found much wisdom in Jeff's words. We approached the dock, and Jeff took the helm, and I went ahead to make the hook. I made it in one pass, despite the rum, and as the boat turned to hang on the buoy, driven by the wind, I held onto the bull rigging and looked out at the ocean. The wind shifted slightly, and the music that was being put on the beach for the tourists came over the water. I heard a Jimmy Buffett song, and his words suddenly crystallized in my brain. And I found my home. Yeah, I found home. And you can have everything I've got. Because I found my home. I spun on my heels and literally jumped onto the cabin sole. Jeff looked up in surprise. I didn't wait, but grabbed a bottle of rum and filled both glasses. Once seated, I began to speak in a concentrated manner. Jeff, is this boat big enough to circumnavigate the globe? Hell yeah. A few people have done it on a 65. Why? Let's do it. What? Let's go around the world and do all the things you've dreamed of. You're crazy. Have you been in the sun too long or drank too much rum or both? Yes, maybe, but just listen. I began to explain the completely unconventional plan that flashed through my brain. I'm not going to go back and try to coexist with Shelley. I've seen for myself what she is. I don't want my children to be exposed to that lifestyle. Trying to exist together will be a toxic mix that will ultimately hurt us all. Yes, we've talked about it. I won't divorce her and give her half of what I've accumulated. I won't pay child support so she can introduce my children to her ungodly lifestyle and permanently corrupt them. That's just not going to happen. Yes, but what other recourse do you have? An unconventional one. A plan she can't even imagine. Jeff looked at me, tilting his head. Yeah? How hard is it to find a boat in the middle of the ocean if the transponder isn't on? Almost impossible. How many ports exist where a boat can go in and out to resupply? Christ, thousands at least. What if you get an offer to circumnavigate the globe for at least 11 years? His eyes widened. That's one hell of a charter. What are you offering? Do you have anything that connects you to the Virgin Islands? 3 boats, a quarter share in the marina, and a small beach house. How much are the boats worth? Probably 60,000 each. Do you really have to work at the marina? No, I just hang out there doing various jobs to fill the time between charters. What if you sold the other 3 boats to another charter company, let your partners run the marina like they did, and rent out your bungalow as a vacation rental? It would free you up, provide a little cash flow, and give you the opportunity to fulfill a dream. I saw him hesitate. He lowered his gaze to his rum and stared into it for several minutes. Such a trip as you are thinking of would be expensive. How will you be able to afford it? If you just disappear with the children, your wife will be furious. Every agency she can find will try to ferret you out, and you can bet she'll get the court to freeze all your assets. In a year's time, she'll be able to sue you and get everything. And if there's nothing to get? I don't understand. My net worth is almost $1 million. If that money was sitting somewhere where no one but me could find it or access it, how far do you think that would get us? Jesus. With that kind of money, we could float around for years. And I can work from almost anywhere if I have a reliable internet connection. You have a satellite system on board. Is it reliable? Hell yes. That expensive son of a bitch better be working. What about your kids? Would you just take them away from your wife like that? She peeled them off her leg and turned her back on them the morning she left. All that time she didn't try to call or write to them? You didn't notice them asking about her? I don't think that, apart from the legal consequences, I would have any doubts. There are legal ramifications. You know you're going to be a fugitive. So the International Ocean Police will be looking for me? No, but if you want to go ashore anywhere, you run the risk of being discovered, arrested, and deported. My intuition tells me that's a very unlikely situation. Unless we spend an inordinate amount of time in some port, do something stupid to attract attention, and try to travel by airplane, I don't think there's much chance. That's a risk I'm willing to take. How long will it take you to set this up? I think a week or too much. I'll be able to do most of it remotely. How do you feel about taking a motley crew, a possible criminal, and heading off to unknown lands for grand adventures? Jeff finished the rest of his rum, slammed the plastic cup on the table, and stood up. Hoist the mainsail, sailor. It's time to begin this pirate adventure. To be continued. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.